for video editing for the most part. You can do some, you can do some animation, keyframe animation and whatnot in Premiere, but it's mostly, editing together video for the most part. However, it does interact nicely with After Effects. So we're gonna, I figure I wanted to do the After Effects link, but I need to kind of cover the basics of Premiere again anyway. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it all together, pretty much. I did put assets on Brightspace if you want to download those and mess with them. But I'm just going to kind of run through the basics. Probably not get real in depth, but at least, refamiliarize ourselves with it. So Premiere acts differently than, or is different, I should say, than After Effects. Even though they do many similar things, Premiere just seems different. It's a little alien when it comes to the whole Adobe experience for the most part, I kind of feel. It's still got a start screen and that kind of stuff, but setting up a new project is totally different. When you set up a new project, you give it a name and pick a place to save it, all up here along the top. By default, if you don't change the location, by default it'll always put it in a documents folder, but I'm going to save it to a different location here on my drive. So actually I'll just save it there. All right. Do that. And create, and it'll take a second and we get this interface, which looks kind of like After Effects, I think, but it's different, which again, I think kind of makes it a little confusing as a result, but this is kind of what it is. If we want to change our workspace, this little icon up here in the corner has all of our workspaces. I'm just going to use, that makes sense, something simple. I'll just try the Essentials. We'll use it. The Essentials layout. Actually, I want to use all their different workspaces are kind of completely, they're all different setups. So color, it's audio. Just groupings of panels for different things. So we'll just do, all right, I'll stick with this one. So I'm using the window I'm using is the starter window. Bless you. So the starter window places our timeline all the way across the bottom. Our program window or our composition window here in the sort of middle. Our project panel, where we load all of our media and assets, sits here to the side, and then our effects panel is over here. So this is pretty simple setup, and it'll at least get us started. So usually whenever I organize a Premiere window. Like I've got, if I look at my, where is it? So I've got a folder here, a bunch of assets. I've got some audio, folder, or photos and video. This is the stuff I uploaded to Brightspace. I'll usually just organize these in my computer and then save my project file right alongside of them, because I can just grab those and drag them right onto that project window, and it'll keep them all in folders and organize the same way I've got them on my computer. There's still links. If you move an object in your desktop or in the Finder, it'll break the link into After Effects. So there's still links to files, but it at least organizes everything so that it's the same. So it's the same where you've got it set up. If you want to do it manually, it's really just a matter of, clicking in the project demo window or in the project window and going and finding the assets that you want to load up, select those and import them. So it's similar to After Effects in that regard. I'm not going to import that. So we organize all of our assets here, and we don't necessarily create compositions like we do in After Effects, but we do create sequences to edit video in. And there's a couple of ways to go about doing that part. So this timeline window down here just doesn't have anything in it at the moment. I can do one of two things. I can find video or footage up here in my project area and drag it down into the timeline. Let go, and it'll build out a timeline with that video in place. This timeline will pick up, whenever I do it that way though, it'll pick up the parameters of whatever video it is that I dropped in there. So if this video is 24 frames a second, that's the way it'll set up the workspace, the frame rate and whatnot. It'll match what's there. And notice also that whenever I did that, it creates a new file in my video folder for the sequence. So if I sort of pull this out, this is a sequence that I just create. This is the sequence, which is what I have down here, created from this video, which I drug into it. Sequence is kind of like a composition. So you can see all of its parameters. So it's about 28 seconds long. And if you want to see the settings of that sequence, go up under the sequence menu to sequence settings. And there's all the settings for it. So this is a 29.9 frames per second. It's got an audio track, although I don't think it really has anything in it. But it sets all of those settings for you. So you can avoid having to actually do the setup that way. If you know exactly what settings you need though, you can also, if I close these back up, if you right click in that project window, you can create a new item, create a new sequence, and it'll bring up the setup dialog, which basically gives you a bunch of presets, or you can go in and customize them all yourself, one of the two. So set up the number of tracks that it's got, that sort of thing, which we'll look at in a moment. But under settings, We could change the, right now it's 29.9 setting, 9.7. We could change any of this stuff. Our sequence presets, these are just some presets for sequences, which are fairly common. So 1080p 29.7 should give you, will give you a 1920 by 1080 30 frame per second video. So you can either manually create a sequence that way, or you can create it just by taking your footage, dragging it down here into the timeline window, and it'll create a sequence for you. So this sequence right here is this file right here. Usually I'll also take the time to add a folder for sequences. And drop those sequences into, just so I've got everything together and organized, sort of collected them together. Any other sequences I create will just show up down here as different tabs, and I'll drop them in there. So sequences equate to compositions in After Effects. And we can still kind of scrub through and look at what we've got. So that's our project window and setting up a basic sequence. Our program window is actually our workspace. Anything we want to do, we do in here. So if I scale this down to half, 25. I can select this, this element, move it around, resize it, do whatever I need to. So that's the equivalent of our composition window. And then some effects over here. And we'll go back to so for manual adjustments of items, rather than edit them down here all we really do is cut video apart, edit it, put it together. If we need to do any kind of work with the parameters like scale, change opacity, position, that kind of stuff, we can, actually here I'll have to go to bring up our effect controls, and usually I'll take those and put them over here with my project file. But like if I have this item down here in my timeline selected, effect controls give me parameters for my motion, for position and scale, rotation, my anchor points, that kind of thing, our opacity, and volume as well. So the parameters we're used to seeing down here at the bottom for After Effects, we actually see up here under effect controls. And we can close all those up. Any other effects that we add to this clip will show up here under these effects controls for that particular item. So these change based upon the item that you have selected, basically. If we want to make a change to, so say we want this clip to sort of grow in the frame, like we're moving through it. We place our playhead on the timeline where we want to set keyframes and go up to scale, for instance, and set a keyframe for that. So we've got a stopwatch, just like we do in After Effects, to set keyframes. Move our playhead forward a little bit to wherever seems good. And We can either double click on the object over here and transform it manually, or scale it up from the center if we just slide this number over here in our effect controls. And you'll see that whenever we do that, it gives us keyframes right out next to that item. And if I scrub through here, we're just kind of pushing on that shape a little bit. So keyframing is the same. I mean, the theory, the concept is the same. If these are all too close together, all of these windows have a little slider down here along the bottom that we can just slide in the magnification so we can zoom in on whatever it is we're working on. And you can sort of resize these windows as you need to. But this little slider down here along the bottom will allow you to zoom in on your timeline. So this has one here on the program window. We've got one as well. Down here on our timeline. And it works pretty much the same way that it does with After Effects. So all of our transforms through the Effect Controls panel. If we want to ease these keyframes, select the keyframe, right-click on it, and it's just got two options, ease in and ease out. So the best way to, ease in and ease out, basically you're easing into a time marker or you're easing out of a time marker. So if I select this one and I want to ease my way into it, so as the motion happens, it slows down as it gets closer to that marker. I'm going to set it to ease in. You see that little marker changes. And it'll sort of slow into it. It does have the equivalent of a speed graph or a value graph, which in order to access that here on the scale object, or any of these, all you really do is turn this little arrow right next to them down, and you'll see that you've got a graph to make edits to. And if I just click on this handlebar and slide it across, the concept, again, is the same as it is in After Effects, with changing how that ease behaves. So if I play that through again, it sort of eases into that a lot more gently. Rotation anchor points, that kind of stuff, all are pretty self-explanatory. And you can also control if there's actual audio attached to your clip. You can control its volume, the volume for the different channels, as well as the balance in the audio. This doesn't really have, it's got an audio track, but it doesn't really have much in it, So that's the general control of your elements. So if we come down here and take a look at our timeline, it's a little different as well. So we've got there's like this little gray line that runs, heavier gray line that runs right through the middle of it. Anything to the top side of that are going to be our video tracks. Anything to the bottom side of that are going to be our audio tracks. And we can add as many video tracks as we need and as many audio tracks as we need. So by default, I mean, mine are set up just to do 3. Whichever video track is on top is going to take precedence. So if I come back over to my, I'll grab this video clip. So if you notice, all of my frame rates are different on all of these clips. If I drag this down here, it will try to adapt the clip to whatever the frame rate is of the sequence that I'm dropping it into. So what is, let me see, sequence settings. Okay, so it is 1920 by 1080, all right. So you see I dropped another video up on top here, so as I scrub across, anything that's on top takes precedence. I can also slide this out here and put it right next to the end of that clip. And this one's kind of small, so although it's not a great idea to do so, I can always, with this clip selected, go into my effect controls under motion and scale, and I can scale this up a little bit. I normally wouldn't just scale it up, but we'll do it for this purpose. So, video tracks on top, audio tracks on the bottom. We can hide tracks just by clicking on the eyeball right next to it. Lock them. Sort of the regular tools to manage them, to manage all of this. So that's the arrangement of our timeline. We can adjust clips, the lengths of them, with our select. So if we come over here to our tools that are on the side, grab our selection tool, I could come in here and place my cursor right at the very end of the sequence. You'll see it turns red. Click and drag to shorten that sequence up. And basically it's just trimming it is all it's really doing. Shorten it up. If I need to actually trim it from the start, I can do, you can do that too. Trim out just a particular section. So you just got to kind of move your playhead along, identify where you want to trim stuff at, and make those adjustments. The other way you can do that, though, I don't know if it's necessarily simpler or not, but a little more exact or a little more precise. I'm just going to stretch this back out. So let's see, this is 3192. So if I go back over here to my project window, 31. So this is the clip that I'm using right now. If I double click on that, it'll open it up here in the source window, right along with my program. I can sort of scrub along this, see what all I've got. Maybe I like from here, right about here, over to about here. I can set in and out points on this and drag just the portion of this video that I want down into my timeline. It doesn't edit my original video at all. It just gives me some control over what I actually put into my timeline. So if I scrub across to here, in Premiere, anytime you, within a timeline like this, if you tap the I key on your keyboard, that sets an endpoint. You'll see the change it made to my timeline was it set a marker, not really a marker, but it set an endpoint right here. And then if I come across to, say, this part, and tap the O on my keyboard, that'll set its out. So you set an in point and an out point. And once you've done that, you can just, this little icon that sits up here on top right above it. Actually, I think you can grab the video itself. I usually grab this little icon. Grab that and drag it down into your timeline. And that's just the sequence that I set in and out markers on, is all that I drug into it. So that's the original full-length clip. This is the one that I just placed a clip or pulled a clip out of, or just the clipped portion that I grabbed. So it doesn't affect my original images at all, or my original video at all, only the items that I put into my timeline. So I'm going to take that one back out and just shorten this up a bit. And then I get this gap in the middle. If I just click in there, it'll highlight it, hit the delete key, and that'll delete the space and pull everything else over to it. So maybe I'll keep all of that, and I got one more. Drag this one down into our timeline and see what that is. And I've got a black hole image. So again, this image is a little bit small. If I select that, I can go to my effect controls, work with the scale. And I've got that to work with. So those are, ways to bring footage into our timeline. Once we get it here, what if adjusting the ends don't really trim it the way we want it to? We can again come back over here to our tools, and let's say that on this sequence right here in the middle, I like that portion, but say I don't want this middle portion. I don't think it really fits what I'm doing. So I'm just going to pull my cursor over right to about where that changes. And if I come over here to my tools along the left-hand side and grab about the fourth one down as a razor, grab that. Come over here, I can clip. If I just click right in the middle of that sequence, that'll cut it. Then I can slide my playhead across to the end of that to where this part starts. And I can click with that razor again. And then go back to my selection tool, grab this section in the middle, delete it. And then select that empty space, delete it, and that'll pull the clips together again. But you see how whenever I did that, it also pulled this over along with it. So kind of keeps everything together. And I messed up my clip, my cut, so I can zoom in on that really tight. eraser, clip that again. That little section, delete it. And now these clips fairly seamlessly. So it's really just like, you know, you place it in, it's really just like cutting it and deleting sections. Get this back out. Play that through. Actually, I'm going to shorten that up. So these are pretty straight cuts. They don't do, which really aren't all that dynamic, but just sort of cutting things up and trimming it together does, you know, you can set up your time and whatnot. Usually video will need to be a certain length of time, but at least with Premiere, the one nice thing is if you want to try different compositions, like maybe I'm not sure that this, like maybe that really shouldn't go first. Maybe I ought to lead with that part. You can try different combinations by selecting all of your elements. So like, so if the second item down in my tools list, if I click on just the first element, it'll select everything after it. Select all those, copy them, come out here a little bit and paste them. I could come out here and try a different composition. So I could, maybe I decide to grab this section, pull it out here. Try that combination. See how I think it works. Pull this one back here, this one out here. So I've got the same clips, but it's kind of nice because it allows me, it's very non-linear from the standpoint that, you know, I've got one composition here of clips, but I can copy them and try a different combination if I want to. And maybe that's far too long, probably is. Trim that in. It gives me the opportunity just to try different setups. In order to, so remember the I and the O key we used up here for in and out points? They work down here as well. So I can set, and this little yellow bar kind of gives you a sense of what your whole composition is. So if I've got my playhead here at the beginning, tap my I for in, come over here, tap O for out, and I decide to go up here to the export panel and render this, that's the segment that I'm going to render out. So I'm doing all of my edits here from within this edit panel, but if I want to export it, once I set those in and out points, come over here to the export panel, click on that. There's a bunch of different preset options already set up. Behance, Facebook, TikTok, Vimeo, a lot of social options. You can change your file name for the export. So, demo test, MP4. H.264 format is fairly standard, so I usually just leave those alone. And you come down here when you're done, and you can either send it to the Adobe Media Encoder, or you can render it, export it straight out of Premiere. So if I send it to Media Encoder, which I don't have open right now, if I send it to Media Encoder, you'll see it'll launch Media Encoder. So this is one of the dynamic links that Premiere has. After Effects has the same thing. It'll open Media Encoder, place the export file there, and render it from Media Encoder. The benefit to actually using those dynamic links is that sometimes these, if you get a very long video, they take a while to render. So you can send them to Media Encoder, they can render over there, but you can come back over to Premiere and continue working on a different composition maybe. And I have a tendency just to render straight out of the applications themselves rather than going to Media Encoder, but, you know, here's the video. Oh, that's not it. It actually takes a minute to load it up. It has to process it, and it loads it in here. And it'll render through here. I find Media Encoder to be a little buggy sometimes, though. Actually, for me, it almost always is. I've never gotten it. I mean, very seldom do I get it to work smoothly for whatever reason. You always have to make sure that you've got the exact same version, software version of Media Encoder that you have of Premiere and After Effects for all of them to work really well together. They all keep their software numbers the same. So, but it'll go in here and it'll render out of Media Encoder, usually. So it launched it, but it didn't drop it. So it's in there. Actually, I can change where I save it to. There we go. Motion, Premiere, and I'll just save it there. And then click the play button to render it. And it'll go through and render. And it does it pretty quick. And I can hop back over to so here's my demo test. Open that with QuickTime. And put your entire composition together that way. Back in Premiere. So you can also slide these in and out points. So I could slide it over here to test this one, render that, kind of compare them against each other if I wanted to. So those are basically, at least as far as video goes, that's kind of how to place video within a sequence, trim them, bring them all together. Other things I can do with this, I'm going to just zoom in on this section right here. So if you don't like, there's some basic crossfades. So if I place my cursor right between these two clips, put my mouse right over top of the line in between them, right click, I can apply a default transition. which will place a crossfade here. Sometimes it'll place it too far into one clip or another, but when you select that, up here in your effect controls, you've got options to center at the cut, which is usually what we'll want to do. And then this is going to last for 1 second. So I can either come down here and pull out the duration of that crossfade, or I can set its duration up here in the effects controls. So I could go to 2 seconds, alignment, center at the cut, and then when I play, those sort of slowly crossfade. So it doesn't, I mean, sort of a standard crossfade, it does really pretty nicely. You just need to kind of control how long those take. And you can add those in to all of your cuts if you want. Right click, apply default transition. That one, put it right where it's supposed to. We could also try a different video description from our effects panel, or a video transition. Let's try a page peel. And we apply those by adding that default transition and then grabbing the page transition we want to try and drop it right on top of it. So this one just does sort of a page peel. Maybe instead of page peel, let's see what Iris does. So you can try some of the different default transitions between clips. Do a wipe or a zoom. Let's do a cross zoom. Play that through. So we can try different transitions that way as well. Since regular hard cuts are kind of boring. Pull those out. There we go. There are also other video different transitions and whatnot. You can buy different packages from Envato and whatnot that have different transitions that other people have made. These do an okay job for, let's see what Chroma Leaks do. Light rays. So some different ones worth trying. I mean, the only way you really know what they do is to give them a shot. All right, so So those are kind of basics of editing video together. We can add audio into that as well. So if I've got an audio track. I'll drag down here and if I play that across. So we've got a waveform to kind of work with, just the same way that and we can adjust the volume level on any of our audio that we place. This little line that goes right through the middle of the waveform, if you click on it and drag it up, it'll increase the volume. Drag it down to decrease the volume. Let's see here. Let's fix these up. And we can resize our audio and our video panels by, it's the same way we've got this zoom bar that runs along the bottom, we've got them along the side as well. So if we squish that up and slide it down, that's how I get my larger variation of the web form that I can see. So this particular clip has 2 channels, which is why I see 2 of them, top and bottom. And we can also try, so if I've got, say, just this clip right here that I want to have audio for, I can select my audio clip and I can try. After Effects or Premiere has a retiming feature, so that if I go under this third icon, down to the very bottom there's a remix tool. If I select that remix tool and slide the end of this clip over, oops, it'll analyze the clip. It's got a little dialogue there that it shows, and it'll adjust it for you based on the timing. So what's kind of nice about this tool is, if you don't want to take the time to go into Adobe Auditions to mix audio, to go to extremes to mix audio, it does do a fairly nice job of quickly doing a remix on what you've got. And with the After Effects to Premiere Live Link, You could theoretically mix video in Premiere as well, shorten video up to be used in After Effects. And again, it only really modifies the clip that I put down on my timeline. If I want to try something different over here with this, I can grab that clip again, drop it in here, and try to mix that as well. Go back and grab that remix tool, click and drag it across. Usually it makes it a little longer than the footage you've got. So you just kind of adjust it until you get it where you want it. So we can place audio in that way, and place sound effects and anything else we want to put in there. I just used audio that I got from Pexels, downloaded it and used it. We do have Adobe Essential Sound, which has footage that you can access from the your Adobe Creative Cloud account. It just gives you low-res versions of that audio. It's not, unless you have to buy a license to get the regular HD, the high def version of it. But for little projects like this, they work pretty well. You can keep track of your audio levels along the side over here as they play through. You generally don't want them to go into the red, so adjust your volume until it kind of sets up where in a good spot. And I won't go in depth into Essential Sounds yet, but so anyway, that's, kind of where those are sort of those are the basics of placing video, editing it, placing music back in. So what's nice about After Effects about all this, though, is this live link between After Effects and Premiere allows us to sort of use After Effects the way it's, for what it's built for, and use Premiere for what it's built for. So if we've got a lot of video to edit, but we need some graphics, some, animated type and that kind of thing, then the live link, doing that in After Effects, is generally a better solution than trying to animate it in Premiere. You can do some basic animation in Premiere, with kind of like we did with some of these clips, keyframing and whatnot. You can set type and do that as well. But I think animating type, if you want to do anything more than just fading text in and fading it out again, is better done in After Effects. So I'm going to change my composition, and we're going to do something different. So I'm going to make a new, we'll close that sequence, and make a new sequence with, let's see. Is this the one? Let's see. If I double click on these sequences, I can see what they are. I think I want to work with this black hole image. So I'm going to drag this down into or I'm going to create right click on it and create a sequence a third way. If I right click on a piece of footage, I can create a new sequence from that clip. And it creates a sequence down here. And we'll leave that alone. But I've also got some photos up here. So the one I'm going to use is this one. And I'm going to drop it on top. If I select that sequence, go to my effect controls, to my scale, and scale that down, I've got the Starship Enterprise. Nice large version of it. All right, so let's sort of center this up. So within this composition, one of the things you might notice is that I've got my trim and my action safe areas, these little guides, which are basically my margins for video. Remember, just the same way that print has margins to prevent type getting cut off and printing and whatnot, video has safety areas as well for exactly the same reasons. And you can pull these up by going to the little wrench. So on our program window, go down here to this little wrench and safe margins. Turn that on and you'll be able to see those all the time. So this sequence, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to make kind of a simple sequence, and I'm going to link it to After Effects. There's a bunch of different ways. So you can bring an After Effects file, import it into Premiere the way you'd import anything else. You can also, in After Effects, import a Premiere file. So if I have a string of video that say I've got a 30-second spot, I've got 26 seconds, 25 seconds of video that I've edited together, but I need graphics on the front end, graphics on the back. I can import that Premiere file into After Effects just like I would any other file. But here I'm going to do it a little bit differently. And so I want to set up what I want my final composition to be first. And I'm just going to select my select tool down here. I've got my Starship Enterprise sitting right on top of this black hole. And I'm just going to kind of position this a little bit high. And then I'm going to make edits to the Enterprise as well as to some type in After Effects. So the first thing I want to do is set up my overall composition. So I've got a Starship. I want to come down here to my tools, down here by my timeline, select type, and just click out here, and what is it? NCC 1701, I think. And I need to be able to edit my type. So I'm going to go up to my window, grab my Essential Graphics panel. So I have my type options. And he'll just drop it over here. And I'm just going to pick I knew which typeface I really wanted. And you can pick any typeface you want if you're doing it with me. I'm using Boucherie Block Italic. Bold Italic. There we go. And then just sort of position that. Grab my Enterprise. Slide him over a little bit. Yeah. So, over here, I went to the window menu, to Essential Graphics. And it should drop it right in over here with that set. So, I haven't saved this file in a while, so I'm going to do that. So I got NC 1701, and I think I want like a line coming over to it. So I think what I want to do is I want to animate the type. I want to have a line come over to it, and then have the text appear, sort of fade in above it. So if I grab my pen tool, again for my tools here along the side next to my timeline, and I don't really have to do this part in Premiere. I could do this part in After Effects actually pretty easily, but I think at least if I set up what I want to do here, it makes it easier when I go to After Effects. Zoom in a little bit. So I've got this line, I got my type. Let's start with these, something kind of nice and simple. So when I created that graphic, it basically created this graphic element right here. And I'm just going to click on that, right click on it. And if I come down to right here, it's actually near the top. There's an option that says replace with an After Effects composition. If I select that, you'll see that it's going to open After Effects if I don't already have it open, and ask me to save a file. So it creates a new composition, wants me to save it. I'll just save it with the file that I'm working on. And there's my type and that line all within an After Effects window where I can, so it's all in position where I want it. Now I can animate it just like anything else. And it actually, it's kind of weird the way it does it, because it actually puts all of that within a composition. So if I open this NCC 1701 composition, there are my type element as well as a shape layer that I can animate just like I would anything else. So if I don't have After Effects open, it's going to open it up and ask me to save a file because it needs a file to write to. If I already have After Effects open and I've got another composite and I've got a file open already, a project file open, what it's actually going to do is create a new composition inside of the file that's already open. So if After Effects is already, a project is already open, it's going to create a new file, new composition there. But if it's not open at all, it's going to open it up, ask me to save a file and place a composition in it whenever I do this. So I'll just go ahead and animate this. I'm gonna, let's see, I want the line to come over and then the type to come up above it. So part of the reason I like doing it this way is I'm much more at home in After Effects than I am in Premiere for the most part. This stuff just more probably because I've used it for as long as I've used it. But so I'm just going to start with this type. You can do something, you don't have to do what I do exactly, but I'm just going to do something simple with this, like, actually I'm going to use a text animator on it. So I'm going to animate its position as well as its opacity. And you can just do a simple fade on screen if you want, whatever you feel comfortable doing. I'm going to drop the text right to the line, just a little bit, and go to 0. And then I'm going to use my range selector, my offset, to bring that in. So I'll do that at 0 there. At the very beginning, I'll set my keyframe for my offset. And I'm going to go out to 1 second and bring that up to 100. So it just kind of pops up like that. I actually want to do the whole word though, or the whole line. So I'll go under Advanced, and instead of characters, select lines. And that just kind of makes it, sort of just fades up from that line. Kind of a nice reveal. And I'm also going to take and just do a quick trim path with this line. I think if I, yeah. So I'm gonna keyframe for that. Set that out to 100. So that all kind of comes in together. So it could use some timing adjustment, but point being, I animated this in After Effects. I'll just save that file. But when I come back over to Premiere, and play this through, there's that animation out of After Effects. And I lost my starship. Go ahead and do that out. So we can kind of create that link pretty easily from inside of Premiere to animate that type. So the whole thing kind of does that. And this should probably come over. And I don't like the way Enterprise just sort of pops on screen, but I can fix that too. To create kind of a moving composition. The important point being less exactly what I did, more that we can link those and animate that text, do any kind of complex animation in After Effects we need to, and bring it straight into Premiere. So I could do the same thing with the ship. I think it's kind of static the way it is. So I could create an After Effects composition out of that, give it some blinking lights, maybe do something to make it look like the ends of these engines are glowing or something to that effect. Any number of things I can do in After Effects that I can't really do easily in Premiere, and then bring it back in. So and I just do that the same way I did that type. I'd select just the ship, and you can right click on that and replace that with an After Effects composition. Which I'm just going to do that for right now and then go back to Premiere. And I could have this fly in. Let's do. So I could bring ship in something like this. Go to my effects controls, my scale, and set that. Come back, let's see, that was scale. I want to do scale and position, so I'll set my scale, my position. Move it back, and I'm gonna, up here, I'll scale it down. So fly it in. Ease into. So if I select these both, instead of the easy ease being right out here in the contextual menu that pops up, it's actually under temporal interpolation. I can set it to ease in, both of those items. And maybe I make it sort of zoom up and then ease into its final position. So it's kind of a somewhat simple animation with just a photo, some type that we animated. I can go back now into this composition that I set up and do other things to that as well. So if I go back into After Effects, I could, let's see, maybe I'll put on that. Center my anchor point to that layer content. Scale it up a little bit. And then maybe I'll take that little light that I made and add I go into my layers options. What am I looking for? Not blending modes, layer styles. Add an outer glow to that, make it kind of glow. Opacity, noise, spread, and size. Kind of bright. And then just take that shape, and maybe it's just the opacity that I set at full strength there. Make it like a maybe at a second. Dial that down to nothing. And then just sort of, I can either copy and paste that over and over again to sort of make it blink. Instead of doing that, I'm actually going to use, and I need to make a cheat sheet of these, but I can use an expression to make that blink forever. So if on my stopwatch, if I hold down my option key and click on that, it opens up that expression line. And this is just loop out, ping pong. And the benefit to doing that is it'll just sort of pulse over and over again for however long my composition is. And if I want to change the timing on it, all I got to do is change this position between my keyframes. And I could let's duplicate that, drag it over here maybe. So I've got a couple of them. But this one maybe I make last a little bit longer, make it slower. So then when I go back into Premiere, it'll kind of fly in, but it's got those little pulsing lights attached to the front and the back. And I'm just going to set my in here, and I'll set my out here. Oops. In. And it's just kind of, I mean, you know, use After Effects and Premiere kind of back and forth to create a little more complex animations. I could have done everything I just did there in After Effects, no doubt. But if that's one piece of a larger composition with a lot more video elements, it probably makes sense to actually do it, you know, use two apps to do the entire thing. And from there, I can pretty much do, you know, anything I want to it, animate as many parts as I want to, or whatever. I think I do want to place, and from this point, it's really just kind of tweaking it up and doing different things I want to do to it. I mean, I kind of feel like this black hole behind it needs a little bit more of something going on. Maybe I'll go to my effects panel, video effects, color, geometry, place geometry on it, and Lumetri color is kind of a standard for color correction in Premiere. Again, even if you got video in After Effects, taking all that video and bringing it in Premiere to color correct is a fairly common practice. But Lumetri color works on, as just a sort of a quick explanation. The basic color correction, it just adjusts, you know, the white balance, temperature, tint, that sort of thing. It has what are called LUTs, lookup tables, which are basically presets. So if I select, you know, that preset, that actually got rid of the grayness that I was seeing in there that I didn't like. But these different lookup tables are just kind of things to try. I'm just kind of doing extra stuff now. That doesn't look good. So so that's just kind of a review of Premiere, the basics of Premiere. I didn't really get into sound, I mean, doing sound, but that's at least the video and the graphics portion. But even more importantly, what I wanted to get to was the cross-link between Premiere and After Effects. So usually, like I said, I'll start building something in Premiere and then make, you know, then take a piece out of it, swap that with an After Effects composition, and do the work to it in After Effects so it comes back in. I find that's just kind of the smoothest way to work. There are a bunch of other ways to use that workflow though. Like I said, you can, and, I mean, you can drop a Premiere file into After Effects. So, you know, we've got, you know, this all done, or if we just had the clips from our other sequence of just the space clips, we could drop those into After Effects and do other work there if we wanted to. But, you know, picking one way or the other, just know that they all interlock and they all interrelate. You know, I got that. I can go up to export. Send it to media encoder. And what's my warning? Where's my warning at? Offline media. Oh. Weird. Let's save that. Maybe that. And media encoder is saying that there's a comp missing. I don't know what would be missing. So if you didn't do it, you know, take some time, at least if nothing else, to put a couple of clips together in After Effects and then make that cross link, or in Premiere, make that cross link to After Effects and animate something simple. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Just, you know, something simple to sort of do that process. And why does it? I guess I could just go export and export straight out of here.